when the soil structure is correct and the nutrient status of the soil is at its optimum, how do you go about choosing whether to reseed or not? With the high cost of fuel and machinery, it's easy to decide that reseeding is not necessary. But this is not the case, as we've seen throughout the filming of this programme.
What I basically have is I have a grazing platform. I'm interested in producing grazed grass. That's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in producing silage. I have no need to produce silage. If I produce silage, it's purely there as a management tool. So all my grass varieties that I'm selecting them for grazing yield. Grazing is the key word as far as I'm concerned. And therefore I check, well, like any farmer should, that the varieties that I'm using are recommended by NIAB, have the highest scores for grazing. We're in a grass sward here at the moment that is probably just about ready for reseeding. And to establish what's good grass and what's bad grass, basically what's weed grasses and what is productive grasses, the main obviously productive grass we're looking for is ryegrass. And how to know if you've got ryegrass in your sward is just to take a handful, rip it up. Anything with a red base at the bottom, that's a ryegrass plant. Anything with white at the bottom, that's more likely to be a weed grass. And these weed grasses, as we all know, are very unproductive, poor response to nitrogen, poor productivity, and poor performance from your livestock. If you're down below 50% ryegrass, you should be reseeding. Your productivity will be greatly enhanced with young grass.
Permanent pasture reseeded with good varieties can produce grass over 5 years worth an extra £2,000 per acre. As grass varieties are constantly improved, reseeding a 5-year-old lay can produce an extra £1,235 per hectare of feed. So if you've decided that a reseed is the way to go, it's necessary to decide on a mixture that will give you what you want for your particular farming situation.
We're doing something quite unusual here in that we were one of the first people to do this, which was to go to an all diploid mixture. Now what we're trying to do there is produce these really dense swards. We use high sugar grasses, of course we do. Anybody that doesn't use them, well, they're just missing out on so much. What I'm looking for is really dense, highly productive grazing swards. I have no need for them to produce silage. Dual purpose to me is just a compromise. Why anybody would put dual purpose in, I have no idea. They should either put a cutting mixture in or grazing mixture in. A dual purpose is just a compromise between the two. We have tried this year to stitch some red clover in, and we'll see how that goes. But we're looking for clover in our swards for two things. We're looking at for both its nitrogen fixing abilities, but also I want protein. I need protein in my grazing sward, and clover is extremely high in protein, and this is protein basically to put on weight for performance of my cattle. I want maximum production from grass, and our stocking rates are running here. I'm looking for about a tonne to 1,200 kilos, and I can only do that on young grass of the correct varieties that are suited exactly for grazing. I have some older swards this year. They've only been running at about 800 to 900 kilos of live weight per acre, whereas my young swards are running at between a tonne and 1,200 kilos per acre. Now obviously you have to adjust. The way we work is we're killing off grass. We're trying to kill during June and July when the prices are at their highest. These are cattle that have been on the kale over the winter time. They come off the kale, they go on to grass. Because they're already used to a green diet, they have no check. Because they're already used to being outside, they have no check. They just keep on motoring and they just keep going. So by June, July, we're killing at our optimum weights. And this year we're sort of killing in around about the 310 to 315 kilos carcass weight. And at the prices that we were getting a few weeks ago in June and July, well, quids in.
Seedbed preparation is important if you are going to ensure productivity from grass, and there are many ways of doing this. But first, to plough or not to plough. It's important to assess whether ploughing is right for your farm. Consider both costs and the environmental rules applying to your fields, especially if your grass is classed as permanent pasture. Ploughing can release soil nitrogen with no crop to use it, thus the leaching risk is high. Improve soil structure, particularly compacted layers. Reduce runoff in the longer term, whereas direct drilling is quick with less disruption to ground, sward or stock. but the equipment is expensive and existing weeds and grasses can compete. When you farm high up in the mountains of Mourne, trying to plough is not an option.
Well, reseeding there's no doubt about it, is expensive, but long term it's cheap. The new grass comes very quick in the spring, and that's when you need your early grass. You need new grass or your early grass, you need it in the spring, and you'll get it from new grass. Your new reseed will definitely bulk up a lot earlier in the spring. A lot of the land up around here, especially on this part of the farm, will be very rocky, dry land. Very hard to plough. A lot of stones to yaw, a lot of excess land left with these rocks covered over again. So I leave the ploughing and the cultivating up to the livestock. Any field I'm going to reseed around this particular area of the farm, I spray it off very early in the winter, spray it off in March, get the cattle out onto it and let them do the tramping. Get it well, raises a fair bit of soil with tramping. Just going to relate one of the power harrow and grass it sowed with iron blocked and rolled. Ducks can be a problem you need to be very careful that you get rid of all your ducks. Come in with a good duck spray the year before and spray off your ducks. Make sure your ducks is completely dealt with before you enter a reseeding phase, because if you power harrow them ducks and them still growing, you'll multiply them tenfold.
Another way of renewing a sward is to overseed or slot seed. This reduces the cost compared to a full reseed. Overseeding is useful when you don't want to or can't plough, where there are gaps in the sward, where the soil structure is good and you want to keep a base in the sward to carry stock. More ryegrass or newer varieties are required, and clover needs to be introduced.